Withheld from the public for over 50 years, a portion of the remaining documents related to John F. Kennedy's assassination are being released tonight by the National Archives. In a memo, President Trump ordered late today that the veil finally be lifted. However, at the request of the Intelligence Committee, the president's agreed to a 6-month further review period for the most sensitive of the documents. The secrecy around these files has stoked conspiracy theories for decades, ever since the Warren Commission concluded in its 1964 report that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman responsible for the president's death. Even the late president's brother, Bobby Kennedy, was confronted by skeptics of the report's conclusions. Here's how Bobby Kennedy responded to hecklers demanding the release of the archives files during a campaign rally in March of 1968.
Could I just say that, and I haven't answered this question before, but there would be nobody that would be more interested in all of these matters as to who was responsible for the death of President Kennedy than I would. I have seen all of the matters in the archive. If I became president of the United States, I would not reopen the Warren Commission report. I think I stand by the Warren Commission report. I've seen everything in the archives. The archives will be available at the appropriate time.
I've seen everything in the archives. Well, due to the sheer volume of the materials, it may take time before historians and experts can draw any conclusions about what they contain. Joining me right now is NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams, Julia Ainsley, who's a national security reporter with NBC News, and Evan Thomas, a distinguished presidential historian. His most recent book is Being Nixon. Pete, what do you know about this thing tonight, the timetable of us getting anything interesting overnight?
So the quick answer is not yet. Let's go to the website. Let's go to the National Archives website, and it still says at this hour, with just a few hours left on this date, stay tuned for updates. That's what it said all day. And to explain why, Chris, you have to go back to the law. It was 25 years ago today that Congress passed a law saying all the documents have to come out by the end of today unless, and that's the part that's held them up, unless the intelligence agencies appeal to the president and ask him to withhold certain information. And now we know that for the past couple of weeks, the CIA, the FBI, and some other agencies have been going back and forth with the White House saying, we want these portions of documents redacted. We don't believe they've asked for any documents to be withheld in full, but they've asked for lots of redactions. We're told the White House pushed back on that, and they couldn't reach any agreement, and so the president finally said, get out what you can, what there isn't a disagreement about, and then I'll give the agencies 6 more months to see if they can't winnow back what they want withheld, and then we'll decide what to do finally in March. So that's where we stand tonight. Nothing has come out yet.
Well, let's look at the trail many of us think is the trail right now, which is the CIA may have missed surveilling Lee Harvey Oswald after he returned from Russia when he went down and visited the Soviet embassy in Mexico City. The Cuban embassy had joined the Fair Play for Cuba committee, the pro-Castro committee. All those signs this guy might be trouble. Of course, we know later we learned that he was going after Edwin Walker. He took some shots at the right-wing general. He also, according to his wife, went after Nixon at one point to shoot him, thinking he was in town. But all these signs, and they missed it. But why would you protect the name of an agent at this point? Why would they redact names if there was missing surveillance here?
So my understanding is it's names of people who were cooperating with the U.S. at the time in Mexico who are still alive. It's any agreements that we had with foreign governments that we promised we would never disclose, that kind of thing. That is apparently the sort of thing they're worried about. But what all the scholars tell us, Chris, all the historians that have looked at this, they say they don't believe that there's anything in these documents that's going to change the bottom line that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. And I talked today to a judge who was on the Records Review Board who has seen all this material that hasn't come out yet. And his understanding of what the government wants, what the agencies wants redacted is the way I've just explained it.
Pete, you're always great. Thanks so much. We'll all be part of the sort of Christmas Eve feeling tonight. What's going to be in our stockings tomorrow morning? I want to go now to Julia and then to Evan. What are you going to do tonight? Tell me about the process, because you're going to be on this thing.
It is. We have a team of reporters at the D.C. Bureau with NBC just combing through these things. There are a few areas we want to really concentrate on. Some of these are personality profiles that they did of Oswald, of people he would have spoken to in Mexico. And we're really trying to piece together a picture of what the CIA had on Oswald before the shooting, and then also what they had afterwards. And were there any things that were withheld simply to try to not embarrass the agency?
Yeah, that's not. Evan, let's talk about this. Bobby was very strong there in March of *68, late in the game for him, near the time of his death. Everything I've been coming across, he officially always said, as did his brother before Teddy died, very recently, they did believe the Warren Commission. Yet you hear these utterances from people that he had his doubts.
I believe the people who say he had his doubts. Bobby was racked with guilt about his brother's death, and at some horrible level blamed himself.
Was it the mob he went after? Was it going after Castro? Was it his brother not backing up the Bay of Pigs promised by the CIA that we'd give military cover to them?
There were lots of people who could have killed JFK, and Bobby thought that one of them actually had, or feared that he actually had. Now, not proven. I think these are all conspiracy theories that aren't true. I think Oswald killed JFK.
I did too.
And there was no conspiracy.
Well, what about the Jerry Bruno charge? And he was his advance man, President Kennedy's advance man. He put out the trip. Right. He planned it. He said, there's no way these conspiracy theories could be true because we didn't put the plan for where he was going that day till the day before. And how can anybody plan to put Oswald in that job 6 or whatever weeks beforehand to plan this thing?
There are millions of holes.
It makes no plan.
All the people, all those historians have really looked into this. At the end of the day, Oswald acted alone. All the people who have really seriously looked at this. Nonetheless, there are a lot of nutty conspiracy theories aided by the CIA and the FBI who've kept these secrets all over the years, fueling these conspiracies.
Well, Oswald could have had a crucial witness in determining whether he's part of a larger conspiracy. However, just 2 days after the assassination of President Kennedy, he was shot and killed by Dallas nightclub owner Jack Ruby while in police custody. Here's how that scene played out on live television on NBC.
There is a president. There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot. There's a man with a gun. It's absolute panic. Absolute panic.
Well, 3 months before he took the president's life, Oswald himself admitted to being a Marxist in a local TV interview.
And are you a Marxist?
Well, I have studied Marxist philosophy, yes, sir, and also other philosophers.
But are you a Marxist? I think you did admit on an earlier radio interview that you consider yourself a Marxist.
Well, I would very definitely say that I am a Marxist. That is correct. But that does not mean, however, that I'm a communist.
Well, that distinction is lost on me right now. But Julia, you know, I was years ago, my wife and I got to see the King Tut's tomb. We got into it. There's nothing left. I mean, it's all been taken to the British Museum. I mean, it's gone. Do you get the feeling we might get there tonight to an empty museum?
I think so, and I'm afraid so. But really, just as we were all just pointing out, there has been so much conspiracy built around this that putting out anything could put some of those conspiracies to rest.
Why do you
Maybe
think
not for all.
Why do conspiracy theories sell? I'm going to get to you.
Well, part of it is that Oswald took this to his grave, and so there's a lot that has remained unknown. But also, in kind of piecing together why some of this information would have been held back, think about the time, the height of the Cold War. People were really on edge about what other governments might have been planning, and then their own government with the distrust of the CIA. People knew that their capabilities were growing, and so conspiracy theories just ran wild at this time, and they've really continued.
Is part of it, Evan, that the left, the political left, starting all the way at the center, all the way to the left, cannot stand the idea it was a communist that did it and want to believe somehow the right wing did it. Somehow they did it.
People want to believe things. That's how you have conspiracy theories. They have the belief first and the facts come second. There always will be. Anytime something terrible happens, there has to be an explanation. Even if the truth is just some crazy person with a gun, there has to be a broader plot, a broader conspiracy, and that sustained it all these years.
And yet that is disproved every time we have a mass shooting, every time we have assassination. It's some zero that did it. Somebody, we only know about them because they're bad. Anyway, thank you, Joe Ansley. Good luck tonight in your search, looking through those Christmas stockings.
It'll be a long night.
Evan Thompson, one of the great historians. Up next,